Sometimes Panqui notices something. When people feel stuck in their job, the mind jumps to one dramatic solution: quit, leave, escape. It feels like the only way to make the discomfort stop. But here is something most people don't realize. The brain tends to think in extremes, that either stay forever or quit immediately. And because quitting immediately feels scary, risky, and irresponsible, most people do the only thing that feels safe. They stay, even when they know something is wrong. Even when every Sunday night feels heavy. Even when Monday morning feels like pushing a rock uphill. And the strange thing is, many people stay not because they love their job, but because the idea of leaving feels too big, too complicated, too uncertain. So the brain chooses the familiar discomfort over the unknown. But there is another option that people almost never talk about. You don't have to quit today. You can start the countdown. And Panqui started thinking, what if you don't have to quit today? What if you just start preparing to leave? Those two ideas might sound similar, but psychologically, they are completely different. One creates panic. The other creates control. When people think they must quit immediately, the brain starts running a long list of fears. What about money? What about health insurance? What if the next thing fails? What if I regret it? What if I can't find something better? And suddenly the idea of leaving feels impossible. So the brain shuts the idea down. But when you introduce the concept of a countdown, everything changes. Because now you're not making a dramatic decision, you're creating a plan. Maybe your countdown is 90 days, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 1 year. The exact number doesn't matter. What matters is that the job stops feeling like a life sentence and starts feeling temporary. And when something becomes temporary, the brain relaxes. Suddenly you're not trapped anymore. You're transitioning. The same job that once felt unbearable starts to feel different. Because now it has a purpose. It becomes the bridge between where you are and where you want to go. And bridges are meant to be crossed, not lived on forever. When people start a countdown, something interesting happens. Their relationship with work changes. Before the countdown, every frustrating moment feels personal. Every annoying meeting feels unbearable. Every difficult email feels like proof that the job is wrong. But after the countdown begins, those same moments lose their power. Because now the job has an expiration date. It's temporary. And temporary things are easier to tolerate. Think about it this way. Waiting in line for 5 minutes can feel annoying, but waiting in line for 5 minutes when you know you're about to get something you want feels different. Context changes everything. The same thing happens with work. When you believe you're stuck indefinitely, frustration grows. But when you know you're moving towards something else, patience appears. And that's when the real magic of the countdown begins. Because the countdown is not about waiting. Maybe it's about slowly building something else. This is the part many people misunderstand. A countdown to quitting is not just marking days on a calendar. It's preparation. Maybe you start saving money. Maybe you start learning new skills. Maybe you begin exploring a creative project. Maybe you start researching industries that interest you. Maybe you simply start paying attention to what energizes you and what drains you. These small actions might seem insignificant at first, but over time, they compound. 30 days becomes 60, 60 becomes 90. And suddenly, the version of you at the end of the countdown is not the same person who started it. You're more informed, more prepared, more confident. The fear that once felt overwhelming starts shrinking. Not because the future became predictable, but because you became stronger. And this is something people rarely realize about courage. Courage is not a personality trait. It's a side effect of preparation. The more prepared you are, the less terrifying change feels. Think about learning how to swim. Jumping into deep water on your first day would be terrifying. But if you practice slowly, if you learn how to float, if you learn how to breathe properly, eventually the water stops feeling dangerous. The same principle applies to life changes. Preparation transforms fear into movement. And the countdown is simply a structured way to prepare. But there is another benefit to the countdown that most people don't expect. Clarity. When people feel trapped in their job, emotions become loud. Frustration, anger, exhaustion. And when emotions are loud, thinking becomes cloudy. It becomes difficult to understand whether the problem is the job itself or simply burnout. But the countdown creates distance, and distance brings clarity. You start observing instead of reacting. You notice which tasks actually bother you. You notice which moments still feel interesting. You begin to understand what you want more of and what you want less of. And slowly, the next step starts revealing itself, not all at once, but piece by piece. Maybe you realize you don't hate work. You hate a specific environment, or a specific type of pressure, or a specific type of role. Maybe you discover that what you really want is more autonomy, or creativity, or flexibility. These insights rarely appear during moments of panic. They appear during moments of reflection. And the countdown creates space for that reflection. Another interesting thing happens when people start preparing quietly. They stop feeling desperate. Desperation pushes people toward rushed decisions. Preparation creates patience, and patience leads to better choices. Instead of jumping into the first opportunity just to escape, you become selective. You ask better questions. You look for alignment instead of relief. Because now you're not running away from something, you're walking towards something. And that difference matters a lot. Running away creates urgency. Walking towards something creates intention. And intention builds better lives. Sometimes the countdown leads to something unexpected. People start building a project on the side, a creative outlet, a small business idea, a skill they always wanted to develop. And slowly, that side effort begins to grow. Not overnight, but steadily. And one day they realize something surprising. The thing that started as an experiment could actually become the next chapter. Other times, the countdown leads to a new job, a healthier environment, a better team, a role that fits better. And sometimes, the countdown leads to a realization. The job itself was not the problem. Burnout was. And after resting, learning, and adjusting expectations, the same career path starts feeling meaningful again. The countdown does not force a specific outcome. It simply opens possibilities. Because when you stop reacting and start preparing, your perspective expands. And expanded perspective creates options. And options create freedom. At the beginning of this process, the job might feel like a prison. But once the countdown begins, it becomes something else. Fuel. It funds your transition. It gives you time. It provides stability while you explore the unknown. And suddenly the job is no longer the enemy. It's just part of the journey. A temporary chapter. And chapters are meant to end. Eventually, the countdown reaches its final days and something interesting happens. The fear that once felt overwhelming feels smaller because you've already been preparing. You've already been building. You've already been imagining the next step. And when preparation meets opportunity, walking away no longer feels reckless. It feels natural, obvious, like turning the page of a book. Not because everything is perfectly certain, but because you trust the process you built. So if you are someone who feels stuck right now, maybe the answer is not quitting tomorrow. Maybe the first step is simpler. Start the countdown. Pick a realistic timeline. 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and use that time intentionally. Save, learn, Experiment, reflect, build, not in panic, but in preparation. Because the goal is not to escape your life, the goal is to redesign it. Slowly, thoughtfully, one step at a time. And one day, when the countdown reaches 0, you might realize something surprising. You didn't need a dramatic escape. You just needed a plan and the courage to begin it.